Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Robert Barr, and I'm pleased that you're joining me and one another for this streaming Shabbat service. We're living in challenging and difficult times, and this is a chance for us to pause, to catch our breath, to think about where we've been and where we're going. So put away the pencil and the paper, put away the notebook and the keys, set aside the shovel and hammer, rest. For this interval, no buying, no selling, no working, no laboring, no straining, not living in the past, not planning for the future. This is a time for celebration, for joy, for mirth. We are here alive to rejoice in another Sabbath, another opportunity to be together, grateful for our family and our friends. With no distractions, we touch and are touched, the great gift of the Sabbath. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam. That's our bricks and mortar congregation here in Loveland, Ohio, part of Greater Cincinnati, and our Jewish community. That's our online initiative that we began about 15 years ago. We recognized and continue to recognize the value of being online. It allows us to connect with people in our community, people who live close by and people who live across the world. The internet allows us that unique and powerful opportunity. But it is just a tool. What is most important is not the tool that we use, but rather the voice of Judaism that we give expression to here at Congregation Beth Adam, a bold, dynamic Jewish voice. We've been doing it for over 40 years, a Judaism that recognizes we're not like our ancestors. We have been shaped by history and knowledge that they did not have access to. And it's incumbent upon us to take what we know and to build upon it and create a Judaism that is reflective of who we are and what we believe. That's why we've rewritten the liturgy. That's why we've rewritten the service. If you're joining us for the first time, you'll notice that. And if you've been with us multiple times, you know that our services aren't like other congregations because we give voice to a Judaism that's more concerned about what the future is going to look like than being content with what our ancestors said. We no longer just mimic their words. We create something new. We have to be concerned about what are we leaving future generations. This is a bold, dynamic Judaism. I'm delighted that you're sharing this service with me and with one another. Being online too affords us several opportunities. One, it means that we can time shift. You don't have to watch the service when we stream it at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You can watch our service whenever it is convenient for you. We recognize that our lives are more complicated, and a Friday night at 7 o'clock just may not work for you. We also recognize that people live in multiple time zones. We don't just serve people who live in the Eastern Standard Time Zone any longer, so you can watch the service whenever you choose. You can also chat if you're with us at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and you have to figure it out where you're that time, wherever you're living, you can chat. So there are people who join us on at bethadam.org, and they are probably chatting right now. If you're on one of our Facebook pages, either our Beth Adam Facebook page or our ourjewishcommunity.org Facebook page, you can leave a message. Let us know where you are participating from. It also means I can record conversations with different individuals and stream them during this service, which I'm going to do tonight. But I'll do that and explain that in a moment. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're sharing this Shabbat together. Now, we continue our service with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. On Shabbat, we create our moment in time. We pause to reflect upon our yesterdays and tomorrows, to renew our ties with family and friends, to restore our energies, to refresh our spirits. As the sun descends and the shadows lengthen, the direction of the day gives way to the stillness of night. It's time now for us not to see with our eyes, but with our hearts and minds. As the day gives way to evening, it's time for us to welcome the Sabbath. The candles stand before us, waiting to be lit. We recall our ancestors as we too seek to dispel the darkness and banish the cold. to bring glowing softness, warmth, and safety into our homes. May the dancing flames of these candles kindle warmth within our hearts, wisdom in our minds, passion in our souls. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'Shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. In time, disturbances will pass. Difficulties will dissolve. In time, aggravations will be forgotten. Obstacles will be overcome. In time, we will find solutions even to our most pressing concerns. Mountains move and even disappear. Clouds part, revealing an ever-present sun. In time, moments of desperation will give way to an inner calm, and through others, we will find comfort to our fears. In time, may we find ways to accept life's unending turbulence completely and move gently forward in time. As I said, being online, using technology does allow us to time shift. I recorded a conversation with Rabbi Rabbi Shapiro actually several months ago. I thought I was going to be able to stream it quickly, but with a lot of events and lots of changes taking place, I've not been able to stream it yet. Some of you who've joined us before may know that Rabbi Shapiro and I were study partners while we were students at Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion in the late 70s. And we've known each other and talk on a regular basis. This year, I've asked him to share with me and share with you a conversation about our reflection about 40 plus years in the rabbinate. We recorded one service and streamed it. And this is a second conversation we had, and we dealt with issues around interfaith, particularly around interfaith marriage. So I'm pleased to have Rabbi Rabbi Shapiro joining us again. For those of you who joined us maybe about a month ago, you remember that I had invited Rabbi Shapiro, Rami, to have a conversation with me over the course of this year to reflect on our 40 plus year experience being rabbinic students and rabbis. And as a study partner, he and I had lots of conversations. And I thought, having a conversation about what we have seen over these last 40 years would be a worthwhile endeavor. So Rami, thank you for joining us again, taking the time. I appreciate it. And
I've got all the time in the world, and I love talking with you, and it's more fun doing it where I can see you than just on the phone, which we do all the time.
Yes. So that's good. I like that. So our first conversation was just why we went to rabbinic school and our experiences there. If you folks, you haven't watched it, you can go back in our archives and watch that first conversation where Rami and I sort of established how we met each other and our first experiences. Tonight, I want to talk about the issue of interfaith. Specifically, I think I'm going to start with interfaith marriage because it was such a big issue as I remember when we were students at the Hebrew Union College. So we were in Cincinnati from 1977 to we were ordained in June of 81. And I just remember that while we were in school, there were these debates going on whether or not rabbis should officiate at interfaith marriages or not. And after ordination, it was still raging, and it raged for a long time. And I was somebody who was willing to do interfaith marriages. And sometimes when people get mad at me for doing it. So do you remember much about that when there was like two sets of letters that came out while we were in school, one opposed to doing interfaith marriages and the other, it's okay to do that?
Well, I remember it was a hot issue. I was married in rabbinical school, and my wife's last name is Flanagan. So that sort of set me up for one side or the other. I mean, she's Jewish. She was Jewish when she had converted long before I applied to rabbinical school. So that wasn't an issue. She had converted under the auspices of a Reform rabbi, so there was no issue. They couldn't if we had gone to a conservative seminary or Orthodox seminary, they would have said her conversion doesn't count because, Judaism is nothing if not political. Who's a Jew? Who's a rabbi? It's just all political BS. But, she converted under the auspices of a wonderful Reform rabbi, and she was very happy as a Reform Jew. And so, they accepted her as Jewish. So, but because, we had gone through this whole process, I was definitely on the side of, intermarriage is fine. But I think as time went on, it just seems like such a dumb issue.
To still be talking about 40 some years later.
Yeah, to still be talking about it maybe 6 years later.
So let me ask you, because I wasn't married at the time, was there an issue for couples that where the partner wasn't Jewish getting ordained from HUC? Because I just went to HUC's website and I can I'll read you the policy. There is a policy on their website. It says, this is from HUC's, the Reform Movement and HUC-JIR shared a proud record of reaching out to all who seek to develop their Jewish identity with love and acceptance. Even as our students actively engage in this important work as rabbis or cantors, we expect them to model a firm and lasting commitment to the Jewish home and the Jewish future through the choices they make in their own families. We celebrate the contribution of people of all faiths towards building and sustaining loving Jewish homes. And yet, we believe that rabbis and cantors should exemplify a distinct standard of Jewish continuity. Therefore, HUC-JIR will only admit, graduate, or ordain candidates who, if in a committed long-term relationship, are in such a relationship with a Jewish partner. It is important that our candidates for our program be aware of this policy at the point of application.
And that's the current standard.
Correct. I don't know.
Standard.
Did that exist when you applied?
I assume something like that must have existed. I'm not aware of it. I think that the document you just read, besides being incredibly wordy and unnecessarily verbose. Usually when you don't want people to know what you're really saying, you just say it too many times. Mm-hmm. But the whole notion of continuity, then the result should have been all of our cantors and rabbinic students should marry Midianites because that's who Moses married. And so that's the true practice is don't marry an Israelite, marry a Midianite. Right. But I get what they're saying. And, if you're asking my opinion about it, it's incredibly short-sighted. It makes no sense. In the what century are we in? The 21st century. 21st century. Yeah, it's hard to remember when you deal with rabbinic, stuff like this because it's mostly the 12th century. Right. But if we're going to pretend we've moved from the 12th to the 21st, then the idea of your clergy being committed to Jewish future, I think I don't want a rabbi who's ordained and then says, and my commitment is to the furtherance of the Catholic Church. That makes no sense. Sure. But the future of Judaism isn't in the past, which is what continuity is all about. In fact, the whole notion of continuity is simply a romantic invention of rabbis who overtly left continuity behind in the 19th century. Mm-hmm. So, we broke with that a long time ago. Judaism, and I'm preaching here, but, Judaism is a history. Yeah, right. Judaism is a history of discontinuity, and that's how we survive. And we should be in another moment of creative discontinuity. But instead, we're afraid, or the institutions are afraid. And so we go, oh, no, we have to have continuity. With what? Tell me, I don't have a shtreimel, but I can get one. Mm-hmm. I can probably on Etsy get some clothes so I can dress like a Polish Jew in the 1600s. I can do all these things. Right. Is that what you want me to do? Or is it just continuity around this one issue? I mean, it's absurd.
Right.
The whole
Right.
thing is absurd. Thus ends my TED talk.
There, but it wasn't. I was looking. So Hebrew College, which is a newer seminary, they didn't admit interfaith, a couple that was an interfaith relationship until the first was to do it was the Reconstructionists in 2015. They were the first in 2015, and the Hebrew College just did it in the last year or two. And so it's this ongoing, and I still remember when we were ordained and I would do interfaith marriage, there was a rabbi in New Jersey, I can't recall his name, that put together a list of rabbis around the country who would officiate at interfaith weddings. And I still remember, because I would get the questionnaire and I would send it in and I would get a copy of it. It would list people by region. So if you needed to refer, that was helpful. Yeah. But it also gave the requirements, what different rabbis were willing to do or not. I'm willing to officiate as long as it's not on the Sabbath. I'm willing to officiate as long as the couple has agreed to raise their kids Jewish. You okay there?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Good. I'm willing to officiate. I won't co-officiate. I'll co-officiate, but I only co-officiate. I'm
willing to officiate, but I won't allow the word Jesus to be used. I'll co-officiate, but no words that use the letter J at all. I won't use the letter J.
Right. So
even
there was
Jewish. That's not good. You have to use Yehudit or something.
That's it. But there was that list would come out. I don't think that list, and at the time, I don't think there was more than, at the very beginning, maybe 100 rabbis who were willing to officiate. And I don't know about you, but I still remember early on, and I officiated, but I would get calls because I was on that list from people around the country, like parents. Would you please come and officiate at my child's wedding? I mean, and people were in tears on the phone, and I didn't travel. I chose not to travel. I didn't want to do that. I just didn't think that was the nature of my rabbin, and I was committed to what I was doing in Cincinnati. I did interfaith weddings in Cincinnati, and I know there were rabbis who charged more to do interfaith weddings than a non-interfaith wedding. I mean, there was a business. Yeah. Look,
I mean, people were taking advantage of interfaith couples or would-be interfaith couples. I mean, there's no question about that. Yeah, I didn't travel. I mean, when it came to life cycle events, I mean, that's not why I became a rabbi, right? I'll do weddings because I have to, but if you're not a member of my congregation, I really don't want to do it. But I would help people out, I mean, the way you did. I wouldn't charge them more. Right. I mean, my approach to doing an interfaith wedding is, I would say two things. One, I never did one.
Right.
I never married a couple who actually differed in religion. Their parents maybe differed in religion, but they didn't. I never married an Orthodox Jew to a fundamentalist Christian. Right. I mean, they couldn't agree on anything. They wouldn't get married. I married two secular people who came from different religious backgrounds, but who agreed on everything. Right. Either because they really knew what they believed or because they were totally ignorant and their ignorance overlapped. Right. I don't know what Christianity is. I don't know what Judaism is. Oh, we agree on being ignorant. But whatever it was, they didn't have an issue. Right. But the other thing that I would say is, and this is completely biased, Judaism comes off better than, in this case, Christianity. We're talking mostly. A Jewish wedding is more interesting. And so when you bring the Jewish elements into an interfaith wedding service, the people who don't know these elements, and they're Jews as well as non-Jews, they go, wow, that was really interesting. Mm-hmm. How come my pastor doesn't have that? Well, because you belong to a boring religion. But, you don't say that, but you know what I mean? I mean, it was a way to showcase Judaism. Right. I mean, I always make Judaism out to be the best possible religion because it was an opportunity to advertise. But, it was a bugaboo. It was a boogie person. I don't know.
Right. Well, what's bizarre is it like what the majority of couples getting married are in interfaith relationships? The majority of couples now, and I can't remember what age, 65 or younger, are interfaith couples. They are now the majority, and yet this conversation is still taking place. And now, so it's there even was a website at one time, interfaithfamily.com, which I couldn't find. I did go looking for it. If it exists, I missed it. I apologize, but I couldn't find it. But there's still conversations. How do we now welcome the interfaith couple? I mean, the non-Jew. I mean, there's still, and I kept on reading. It's like, how do we welcome them? Treat them like an equal. Stop.
Right. Exactly.
Stop treating like a second-class citizen.
It was an issue, not at my synagogue, and I'm sure not at yours, but it was an issue in many synagogues. What do you do with the grandparents who are not Jewish? Do you call them up to the bima? Now, this was not your issue, but we would have a whole ceremony with the Torah would be passed down from generation to generation, and the kid would read the Torah blessings and from the Torah. What do you do with the non-Jewish grandparents? So you just include them. They come up with everybody else. Right. You don't single them out and say, right. And now it is a little ceremony for the goyim. You don't do that. I mean, that's just offensive.
Right. Right.
It's ridiculous.
And it's still taking place. That's the problem. We're still, conversation, this is.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you wonder why people don't think synagogue is relevant. Mm-hmm. I mean, come on, it's absurd. But I think, and I'm certainly, this is just an opinion, obviously, but the less meaning there is to the religion, the more this kind of BS is important. The less wisdom rabbis have to impart, the more bullshit they fixate on. Because they have nothing else to do.
Right, right. I mean, now the other thing too is, so you have, there's this whole thing about welcoming. How are we going to welcome, again, not just treat people like equals and stop asking, just assume if they join your congregation, they want to be there. That's one. Two is, now there's this whole thing, can the non-Jewish person be a member of the board? And now there are articles, yes or no, and the conservative movement's struggling. Finally, the conservative movement, I guess, now allows their rabbis to actually attend an interfaith wedding. For a long time, they weren't even allowed to attend the wedding.
Cooties.
I mean, it's like, what? Cooties. It's insane. And, can a non-Jewish person be the president of the congregation? Well, we literally at Beth Adam make no distinction. And in fact, our president, two of my presidents went to a meeting where this was being discussed, and they were just like stunned to hear the kind of conversations that's still taking place. I mean, we are a totally different community today, and we still keep on acting as if we're not. And the rabbinical schools, sort of HUC and the conservative movement, they're still in the past. The Orthodox, they're out of the picture totally on this issue.
Well, yes and no. I wonder how much. I mean, the fact that these issues are still issues among liberals, quote liberals,
right?
I wonder how much of that is due to the fact that they're walking backwards into the future with their eyes focused on Chabad. Because, I mean, still, if you ask, I don't have numbers here, but if you ask many Reform Jews, what's the more authentic Judaism, Chabad or Reform? They're going to go Chabad, right. And they give to Chabad. Right. And they don't go to Chabad because it's not for them, but they give to Chabad because, what if there is a God and he does choose, and he's not going to choose the humanist Jews, he's going to choose the Chabad Jews. Right. Now, if they talk to the Breslover Jews, they'll say, Chabad, those are Goyim. So you got to choose the Breslover. So, you get into the politics of the Hasidic debates. But, they just say, they are the real Orthodox because they wear two yarmulke. They have a yarmulke and a hat on top of the yarmulke. Just in case. That has got to be more Jewish than someone who only wears a yarmulke or someone who doesn't wear a yarmulke at all. Well, I mean, there's an absurdity to the whole thing. But again, it's because we have nothing else to offer. So we'll debate about hat or no hat. So what goes on the top of your head as what's going on in your head. Right. We have nothing to offer.
Right. And I think and then people wonder why people are walking away from Judaism. I mean, that this is, I mean, rather than being an opening, welcoming community, we pretend, I think lots of the Jewish community pretends to be opening and welcoming. I still remember in Cincinnati, there's a big summer fair. It's an art festival, and they were going to have a booth there, one of the big organized Jewish organizations. And I said, well, what are you going to do on Shabbat? And they said, well, no one's going to be able to staff it because we're Jewish. I said, oh, so the sign's going to say, we welcome you, but real Jews wouldn't show up at the art fair on Saturdays. This is the problem. The message is, if somebody observes the Shabbat, they're not going to be there. And if you have workers who observe the Shabbat, don't make them come. But don't pretend everyone's living in that world.
It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. And we just went through, now, I'm assuming this is true where you are, but if you look at the Jewish newspapers here in the Nashville area, every synagogue is warm and family oriented and welcoming, and it's part of their advertisements.
Right. Oh, right.
That's it. That's what we're selling, is warm and welcoming, and right. But if you go to these places, it's like, are you joking? It's warm if they don't turn the air conditioning on, but other than that, it's just the same thing. Right. So it's just, I don't know.
To summarize, 40 years, it hasn't changed. Is that what we were saying? 40 years? It's like, it's more rabbis are doing interfaith weddings, or if they meet all their,
maybe.
It's gotten a little, they've pushed on it. I think there's, because I think the big thing was people debated, would there be more Jewish children or less Jewish children in those marriages? That was always the big debate, and people would do the statistics and say it's good or bad. Crazy stuff. Versus they weren't dealing with the couple. It was about what the results of being married would be. So
and that's another issue. That's the point. Is the point having Jewish kids? And then we have to define, Jewish kids. Is the point? Do they donate? Do they join synagogues? Do they support Israel? All these things that have not. This is just in my mind, have nothing to do with Judaism.
Right.
I would rather have fewer Jews who are serious about spirituality, about Jewish meditation practices, about awakening, about realizing what I consider to be the Jewish mission laid out in Genesis 12:3, to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. There's some deep stuff that Jews are called to do, and that you can use Judaism as tools for doing them. That's what I'm concerned about. You get married, I don't care what background is. Are you raising kids to be a blessing to all the families of the earth, human and otherwise? If not, I don't care what you do. You go to shul or not, it's a waste of time. If you're not doing the deep work, then what's the point?
Well, I think that's a note that we can end on. It's a good summary of that. What's the point if we're not doing the good work? I think that's really important. 40 years, unfortunately, things haven't changed that much, but you raised some issues that we're going to deal with in future conversations. One is somebody had asked about conversion, to talk about the conversion process, and we're going to do that. And I think I want to put on the agenda for our future conversation the issue of continuity. What does that mean, and what does that look like? So thanks, Rami, for the conversation. I love it. Thank you for those of you who joined us. We're going to continue these conversations, and at the end of this year, we're going to have a bunch of conversations, and then we're going to turn them into a TV show that will be streaming on in your area on one of those stations. So thanks.
That sounds like fun. All right, Bob. Take care.
Take care, Rami.
Bye.
I hope you found our conversation enlightening and reflective, helped you understand the arc of how things have changed, what they were like, and how they continue to change, and some of the issues around interfaith that continue to reverberate. I always appreciate Rami's insights, my conversations with him, and I look forward to having several more conversations with him throughout the coming months that I will be sharing with you as we explore what we've experienced over our 40 plus years as rabbis. And now we continue our service with the sharing of wine. We celebrate the fruit of the vine and the bounty of nature as we lift the cup and sip from it. For we are part of nature. which gave us birth and continues to sustain us. Even as we depend upon nature, so do we influence its course. Through the search for understanding, we have gained the knowledge to shape our world. Guided by the best of human wisdom and the compassion of our spirit, we accept the responsibility which rests upon us. May the taste of this wine upon our lips stir within us a reverence for nature and a respect for human endeavor. Bruchim ha'chaim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim ha'chaim ba'adam, blessed is the life within us. And we say, l'chaim, to life. So I'm delighted you were able to join me and one another for this streaming Shabbat service. The best way to find out what is happening at Beth Adam is to go to bethadam.org. Bethadam.org. There on our homepage, you'll find our calendar and upcoming events. You can join us for our streaming services like this. These are always available. In fact, you can also go back, if you go to the Beth Adam website, go to services and streaming Shabbat services, you can go back in time. You could watch that service that Rabbi Shapiro and I recorded or streamed several months ago, and any of the other streaming services for the last couple of years. You can also join us for our hybrid services. That means there are people here in the library with me and online. You need a Zoom link to participate in that, as well as a Zoom link to participate in adult education. But you'd learn about what are the upcoming events by going to bethadam.org. So I hope you do that. I hope you remain in contact. 2024 is really, we're just at the beginning of it. It's an exciting year. It's a big year here at Congregation Beth Adam. As those of you who've joined us know, we are continuing our search and drawing to a conclusion, I believe, for our next Rabbi Chief Executive. That's the formal title of the role that I've been serving here at the congregation for many years. So it's an exciting and a big year. So keep on joining us. Go to bethadam.org. You'll learn more about what's upcoming. And we end with the words we end with each week. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. May the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. May we know blessings through the day, and may we know blessings through the night. May health be for our children and for all people, and all things soon be right. May we know blessings in our comings. May we know blessings when we depart. May we live each day with peace and wisdom in each heart. Can Yehi, let it be. Shabbat Shalom.